All right, hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today. And Don, I have just a couple of things I really want to get off my chest here. That's what I'm trying back in action. And I guess that you're getting sort of an explanation here. Here's the headline. Um, we've done some of the most important work, I think, against the administrative state bias that we've done here, both myself individually, I think Cross Law Firm, and many, many others that assisted on this project. Um, and so, how can I explain it? When as a lawyer, when I talk, when I communicate, so part of what I'm doing here is translating from the original document to human talk here. And the complaint and the motions for protective order um, were really, I guess, my expression of my, in the lawyerly sense, and that's me communicating both with you all and the public, but also, I think, the legal minds of the state of Wisconsin, because we've got these two cases, and there's going to be another one that's filed this week in Folaron versus Milwaukee Public Schools, where the Department of Workforce Development hands the case over to the Department of Administration, um, but binds the new judge's hands, in the same way as they did with this case, where all of the decisions in this to protect what some might say is Judge Calvin Furman and other bureaucrats. This is Teresa Falleron's case, is the one where all of the administrative law judges, the hearing examiners, recuse themselves because Calvin Furman is a witness. It's also the case in which the judge recused himself after saying that Calvin Furman couldn't be recorded, or eventually, I think, that he couldn't be deposed. Um, so that was problematic. That those decisions are locked in, and the new judge, can't get paid for his work unless he agrees that Calvin into the decisions in favor of, again, what we say is Calvin Furman. So that we're going to discuss that one because we're going to file a circuit court action in that case as well. I think it's illegal and against due process for the judge to have a pecuniary interest in the outcome of the case and the decisions here. Again, we can't even now contest the decisions, which is the same thing that happened in the Benitez Morgan and the Stoller case, that the Benitez Morgan bias decisions are all baked in by sort of rule, behind the scenes decision here. Well, in this case, they couldn't have the behind the scenes because we got them with the public record. So we've got the deputy secretary, Pamela McGilvery, going back and forth. And now we have her talking to the judge. I think what we actually have is an email from her to the Capitol Police lamenting that she couldn't talk to the judge during the hearing, but that she would call her soon, something along those lines. Again, beyond everything else that happened, the Department of Corrections made a request to the judge to have the Capitol Police basically shadow me. The judge then had Matt White request the Capitol Police to do that, and then told us on the record, on the recording, that she didn't think she had the power to ask them for anything. And that's what you call ex parte, because it doesn't really matter if there's this they're creating there a appearance that there's a due process and decisions are being made, but in fact the judge just already makes a decision, has somebody else do her dirty work for her, and then tells the party something completely differently. And I want to be clear, because there's so many comments here about what's at stake and why we are doing this. What's at stake is the integrity of the Wisconsin judicial system. And even though this is the administrative system here, the fact that these people are called administrative law judges, the fact that they are part ultimately and reviewed by these inferior tribunals, are reviewed ultimately by the circuit court. This is a huge black eye for justice in Wisconsin, and the more, as importantly, many would say, the appearance of justice in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, Benitez Morgan, as far as I know, is still hearing cases. If she was hearing my case, I would be pretty upset with that recording out there. Um, Matt White is still the head investigator. He's still apparently trying to get me arrested, but he's still able to investigate the claims that I bring on behalf of other people for discrimination. Um, John Gelhard still actively involved in cases that I have, even though he's sitting there listening to people say that it's unfortunate that his boss is saying that it's unfortunate that I get arrested and does nothing and doesn't tell me about it. That's, pretty problematic. And unless the Department of Workforce Development, what do? They put out a glossy brochure with Amy Petchacek's face all over it. That's what they did. And they need to clean up the system here. Governor Evers needs to do something about what's going on. And that's ultimately what the problem is that it's fell to yours truly and others to take care of this mess. So how does something like this work? Well, I think it's fair to say that it takes months to work up and this basically has been boiling over since the beginning of the year, um, with Gelhard and what he originally did to Stolar and how they handed it off. And when we found out about the ex parte communications about the recording, and when they started changing all the orders in March, after they all discussed this, lo and behold, and it looks like it's just the orders for my cases, that there's no recording. So, um, when you and your client's constitutional rights are violated, I'm sure many of you have gone through this. You don't necessarily realize that right away. It takes some time to understand what it is, especially, I mean, well, who else is violating your constitutional rights in the majority but the government, state actors, right? Um, and it takes some time to say, like, did this really just happen? What's the to enforce these things? And we talked a lot about this before. uh what have normally people go through this entire process before they come to me. So I'm sort of going at it in real time with my attorneys. You talk to colleagues, you look at laws, you do all these things to say, like, is what happened to me, is that really okay? Is what's going on here, are they, them, the ALJs getting together to make sure that people who have in-person hearings can't record them, um, or that their pre-hearing conferences aren't recorded, and that they're the only ones who can say what happened there. Um, is that happening to other people? Why is this happening? Is they doing it because of YouTube or for something else? Is it because of Calvin Furman suing me? You got to think about these things. So then what do you do? Well, you got to figure out what you're going to do and how that's going to happen. And it takes months, I would say, to figure out, okay, we're going to go to circuit court, and this is what needs to happen. And I think it took months behind the scenes of going and asking other people, talking with other attorneys, explaining to them. And I'm going to put this out there. The case, and it hasn't come up, even though I have full written permission to put it up there yet. It hasn't come up. But a case in which I got trounced. Everybody knew what was going on, and it was just I got trounced, meaning I did not win. I thought I did a fantastic job, but I did not win. And the attorney on the other side, and I like screwed something up with the timing, and there was a lot of mixed messages from what I was at that time, and I think I made a complete mistake. And the attorney for the municipality sat there and talked to me for like an hour. And it was about that time, about an hour into it, I decided to tell her about what was going on. She couldn't believe it. She could not believe it. And we sat there and we thought this entire case out. the powers, the jurisdiction, what's the best court to go to, all of that stuff, sitting outside the city hall of that municipality. Two attorneys who were antagonistic towards each other um, for quite some time, because that's our jobs. I think that besides whatever other social, parasocial, whatever interesting dynamics were going on, it, I believe that in her mind, this was like something that was sort of an existential threat to attorneys, because it is. You can't have hearing examiners saying things that aren't true, not being candid with the parties. You can't have them making up rules and law and then retaliating against people. And you can't have them having secret decisions behind the back and then saying they're not doing that. I mean, you just cannot have that. So, but I think that moment more than anything else, that conversation which was sort of, and we've talked about this sort of Bob Peterson moment before with other cases. What do I mean by that? Thanks for asking. I mean, remember Bob Peterson, great family friend, neighbor, like hero, all sorts of things, gets to be school board president, and you wonder why is he doing things that you think are not right, and when is it appropriate for you to criticize? It's a thing. And we talk about this on this channel about team blue, team red, team, what's the purple, whatever's in between, all the plaids, you got it. But the pushback from, and this is what there's so much of this is what I believe is what we're getting pushback, is because it's how dare you criticize people who are also on team blue. And I think this channel, more than anything else, is very clear on rejecting that kind of thinking. If this channel is clear about anything, I think I hope we are clear that we reject that people are immune from criticism for any reason, particularly though because that they have allegiance to a particular team, cult, faction, what have you. That's not the St. John's way. I went to Philosopher's College, and at that college, it was drilled into us that it was the idea, not the person, and that anybody was free to fight to the death any idea, and that was encouraged to pile on from every possible way, but not the person. And I challenged that radically many times. But that was, I think that's the critical concept here, is that every idea is subject to criticism from every side if you want real philosophy. Otherwise, you have a pale, formalistic, what's the product of indoctrination? Catechism, formulation, magical spells without any actual hollow, devoid of meaning. That's what you have. Talisman. You're hoping that it might work. It might work in many situations, but you're guaranteeing that it won't work at all. You're guaranteeing that only one side of your sword is sharp. That is a recipe for inherent contradictions. Period. The end. I mean, period. The end. So, I had a video that was meant to be about collaboration, but here we are. So, I am, if anything, smart enough to know when to end things on a clear, coherent, positive note. True philosophy, it's not that hard. If you can tell me that the unexamined life is worth living, let me know. But I haven't found that to be the case. But apparently it works for some.